Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Southwestern Pennsylvania World War II Memorial. Usually I am here on December 7th of every year since the dedication of this memorial in 2012. This year, the passing of my friend Arden Earll has brought me to Pittsburgh from the great state of Tennessee to eulogize my friend at his internment service 2 days ago in Corry, Pennsylvania. I had the honor of delivering that eulogy at the request of his family, Scott and Paulette, who knew my relationship with Arden and thought that I might have some nice things to say about my dear friend, and certainly I did. But today is Memorial Day, May the 31st, 2021, and we are emerging from the pandemic of COVID-19. And before I begin, I will try not to carry on this message as long as I did up in Corry, but I don't think that I could leave any stone unturned when it comes to my friend Arden and Shirley. As you know, friends, times have certainly changed. I grew up in the late 60s, and to some, I'm still a kid. And to others born in this century, I may be considered too old to play on their soccer team, or a little out of touch with the latest social media trend. But back then, and even up until a little bit more than a year ago, you didn't have too much to worry about striking up a conversation with someone you didn't know. And then this pandemic changed all of that. So imagine, if you will, back to just a short time ago. Imagine if you're yourself walking down the street, shopping in the aisle at the grocery store, enjoying a meal with your favorite friends and at your favorite restaurant, several here in Pittsburgh that I know, buying a stamp at the post office where Arden worked for many years. And while you were doing all your favorite things you take for granted, you see an older man with a slender build, not really sharing much more than a passing glance as you carry on your day. Then a smile, or "Hey friend, I noticed your hat. Could you tell me where you were in 1944? I noticed, I smiled, and I asked that question of Arden. And on June 6, 2011, at the National D-Day Memorial in Bedford, Virginia, I had the honor of meeting Arden and Shirley Earll for the first time. I had just arrived within the area where all the veterans gathered just before the commemoration service began. Standing there were Arden and Shirley, unimposing and sharply dressed. They stood out. For today was D-Day, the 67th anniversary of what the world has proclaimed as the longest day. And at the place where all who fell in battle that day are remembered by name, embossed on a bronze tablets affixed upon a wall that forms the backbone of that site. I soon asked that question of Arden Earll, where were you in 1944? And soon my world would open up. And if you had enough time to get to know him and be his friend, the many stories that he would share with you when liberty and freedom hung in the balance. As we got to know each other that day, as it turns out, the Earls lived a little more than an hour's drive east of the huge D-Day reenactment held just over the Ohio border in Pontiac, Ohio. As the event's veteran program coordinator at that time, I encouraged Arden and Shirley to attend the program being held only a few months later. With their commitment to attend the 29th Division reunion that same weekend as the event, we had to plan for 2012. And over the next few months, Arden and I chatted on the phone several times as our friendship developed. Then a job opportunity arose for me to move to Erie, Pennsylvania, close to the town of Corry. And little did I know how important that move would become and how important that friendship would be between Arden and myself. After moving to Erie in March of 2012, on several occasions I visited with Arden and Shirley in their home in here in Corry. Although we talked a lot about D-Day, I too was interested in his life at home before he was drafted by our Uncle Sam, his mother and dad, and the farm they had, and learned of the utmost respect Arden had for his two older brothers already in the service. At 19 years of age, 10 days after graduating from the Union City High School on June 1st, 1943, Arden shipped off for basic training to defend your liberty. In 2014, on June 6th, at the 70th anniversary of D-Day, wouldn't you know it, but I would run into Arden and Shirley again, this time in Normandy, France itself. And here we were, a few thousand miles away from where we are today, only to be brought together by what happened on that longest day, and the thousands of Christian crosses and stars of David which lay out before us within the American cemetery, perpetual reminders of the huge price of victory. As a witness and participant to that pivotal moment in history, I came to rely not only on Arden's knowledge, but his emotions as well. You see, as an historical reenactor, a living historian, if you will, playing the part just doesn't give you enough understanding of what men like Arden feel inside. After seeing Arden and Shirley there at the cemetery, it made me think that despite what may have happened so many years ago, that they still grieve for their fallen brothers. So I asked Arden what he thought about the idea of creating a small cemetery at that reenactment in Ohio. He wholeheartedly supported the idea. And then, when it came time to have our first memorial service there, it was Shirley that placed the first flowers on those imagined graves, with Arden at her side. Later that day, Arden, along with fellow D-Day veterans Ray Woods and Marion Adams, became a part of the Allied invasion force. They arrived on the beach in a small scout car via a landing craft. I can only imagine what those fellows were thinking, perhaps saying to themselves, who could have thought what we did was still this important? Now, after that 2014 event, I went to Arden's home and spent time with him visiting this very cemetery and another right up the road from his home where he served as his caretaker for so many years. In the evening, I sat down with Arden and we began the process to build his application for the French Legion of Honor, France's highest honor. A few weeks later, I went back to finalize the paperwork and talk again on camera. They were magical moments and the cement to an already solid foundation of friendship between Arden and I. One evening, early in 2015, Arden gave me a call and asked me a question. You know, I've been thinking, Eric, that instead of coming ashore in a vehicle and a landing craft, would it be possible for me to come ashore with the troops, standing and carrying in an American flag? Why not, I answered, and with that, I began gathering up all the things that he needed, the 48 Star, American flag, a uniform to wear, the 29th Infantry patch for Shirley to sew on a combat jacket of mine, and with the help of friends of a 29th Division helmet. Then, as summer approached, the great news came. Arden was confirmed by the French government for that, and French President Amin for that coveted medal, the French Legion of Honor. So in Conneaut, only a few hours before the mock invasion would occur, Arden would be pinned with France's highest honor by French Consul General Vincent Florian, and then change out of his suit and tie, and once again storm ashore, recreating that longest day in an Army uniform, just like he had on D-Day. Poor Shirley, accompanied by son Scott and daughter Paulette, were there to witness it all, another magical moment. Our relationship continued over the years, and from time to time we would call on Arden and Shirley at their home. Yet later that year, I would return to Tennessee, and it became a little bit more difficult for me to stay in close contact. But when I came back to Pennsylvania, I made the effort to come and visit for a while. After some struggles at home, Arden and Shirley came to the realization that living at home was getting a little bit too much. In 2018, they were unable to attend that big giant D-Day reenactment in Pontiac, so I made it a point to come to them after the event was over. Although I was near death at the time with sepsis, it was important for me to visit my dear friends. They expected me. I brought some things from the event, a veteran pin, patch, coin, and program, and those small things made such a profound difference for them given their new life in the nursing home. That was the last time I saw Shirley and Arden together before she passed. He loved her with all his heart. Although Arden's traveling days were now over, on the 75th anniversary of D-Day in 2019, I took a photograph of Arden back to Omaha Beach. Along the beach to where my great uncle Amin was killed, I stood that photo up in the sand with a triangular display of several hundred veteran pictures. I did this not only to honor Arden's service, but to validate the effort made by so many that restored liberty and freedom. In December of 2019, as part of an effort to document the actions of General Norman Cota on D-Day itself, I was back in Pennsylvania to interview Arden. In a yet-to-be-made public interview, Arden tells of what he saw General Cota do on that longest day, leading his men, leading Arden, and inspiring the troops to be brave with his own bravery. In February of 2020, I went back again for a second interview with detailed maps pinpointing the very location in which these events happened. And it's with Arden's eyewitness accounting that, with all hope, General Cota will finally receive our nation's highest honor, the Congressional Medal of Honor. And then COVID. I still can't fathom the loss of Arden to this unseen enemy of us all. We all have been hit in one way or the other, but none hit harder than those of the greatest generation. It's awful to think that such a man can be brought down by something so microscopic. On D-Day, from the beaches and beyond, the enemy was plainly visible. Their uniforms unique, their planes different shapes, ships and vehicles all marked, something you could identify and fend off. But how does one do that when all you touch, the air that you breathe, and the cup from which you drink can all lead to your end? From the moment we met in 2011, I always looked upon Arden as a friend, and then a veteran of World War II, and of course D-Day itself second. Although never one to boast upon his actions on D-Day and beyond, Arden was proud of his service, a true patriot, and one who cared deeply for all he knew, and of course this great country in which we live. Going back a few years to 2009, when preparing to see my great uncle Amin's grave in Normandy for the very first time, I wrote a poem which I think describes what men like Arden must have felt like on D-Day, and what their mothers and fathers must have felt like when they heard President Roosevelt's prayer waiting for the news about their son's fate. It went like this. Those are few who remember the boys dressed in khaki and blue, our nation's youth leaving their homes to uphold honor so true. They carry the burden of a nation that stood idle behind closed eyes, clutching arms under smoke-filled skies. As waves crashed upon distant shores, mothers at home cried for boys no more. As untested men emerged in silent fury, God Almighty became the judge and jury. Heroes will be born on days like today, with only God knowing what price they will pay. A whispering bullet made its way along the line, calling out for an American soldier who stood the test of distant time. So where do we go from here? I know Arden would say this: keep going, keep telling our story, keep our history alive, and don't let anyone forget. I can hear them say those very words in my head right now. And if you knew Arden the way I did, you can too. In tribute to Arden and all those who served our great country, and especially those that gave their lives for liberty and freedom, I will now place this 48-star American flag on the pedestal of honor, duty, and country. In tribute to all those servicemen and women who defended freedom and liberty, and those that came back from the war living long lives and giving this great country of ours to us, I will now sound taps in their memory.